Are brain states determinate enough to be concepts? Let's consider that. Hello, philosophers. I'm Chico. Welcome to the Philosopher Show, where we consider the greatest questions of human history. Today, we're filming on location at Mammoth. I'm here with my family, so thought I'd try to get in at least one video. Physicalism in philosophy of mind is the idea that only physical things exist. We're talking brains, neurons, that's it. Dualism is the idea that both physical and some non-physical things also exist. So brains, neurons, but the mind as a non-physical entity exists, and thoughts as non-physical things exist, those kinds of things. So is there any reason to think that there are non-physical things in the mind? Well, according to an argument given by James F. Ross, there's at least some things that are non-physical. Now, this is actually something I was going to do a video on, and then Edward Fazer, in his blog, which is a fabulous blog, wrote a blog post linking to a paper that he wrote, and that was very helpful for this video. So I'll put a link in the description so you can check it out. Let's start with a thought experiment by Saul Kripke. So let's say that you'd never calculated up to 57 before, but somebody asks you to add 68 and 57. Somebody says, give me 68 plus 57. And you think to yourself, no problem, I can do that. I've been adding my whole life. So you think 68 plus 57. But let's say there's also this additional function called quus, right? So there's plus, and then we'll say there's also quus. Now, quus is actually identical to plus for numbers that are smaller than 57. So x quus y it equals or is identical to x plus y when x and y are less than 57. But for x and y greater than 57, then your answer is just 5. No matter how you add it, it's going to be 5. Super odd, but this is a function, right? So what a skeptic could say makes you so sure that you have been doing addition your whole life instead of quaddition? What makes you so sure? I mean, granted, you've already computed up to 57, but let's say there is some quus that has a way higher number, you know, that you've never computed up to. And what makes you so sure that that's not what you've been doing your whole life instead of doing addition? So maybe in the 57 plus 68, instead of answering 125, you should have answered 5. So you were wrong. The strange thing is, any evidence that you give to the contrary is consistent with you actually having done quus. So when you say, no, but I said plus, right? I didn't say quus, I said plus. Yeah, but the whole point of the skeptic is maybe you meant quus when you said plus. Maybe that's what you had in your mind, and you just, didn't match up well with the word that you're using. So you might retort, yeah, but what I actually meant was plus, though. That's what I meant by the word plus, not quus. And the skeptic can always say, yeah, that plus that you just said just now, I actually meant plus. That plus? What's to say that that's not a quus, right? What's to say that you don't actually have quus in your mind and you're saying plus? Like, how can you know that the two things aren't actually just one a mistake for the other one? And what's really bizarre is that the same thing goes for any terms. So everything is like this. All of the terms that we could use are just as semantically indeterminate as this word plus. Now, if you're like me, you might hear that argument and say, okay, that's great, but I still know how to do a plus, right? I still know how to do addition. Say whatever you want. And that's good, right? Keep that in the back of your mind. You still know addition, even if using the word plus doesn't necessarily get to that addition in your mind, right? Even if the word plus doesn't exactly locate that function of addition in your mind, and it could locate a different function, quus, in your mind. So consider another example of a chiliagon. A chiliagon is a 100-sided polygon. Now, can you picture a chiliagon in your mind? Likely what you're picturing is a many-sided polygon, and then on one side it's kind of fuzzy, you know, and you're just sort of fudging over there because you can't in your head picture 100 actual side. And if you couldn't picture a myriagon, an 1,000-sided polygon, or there's going to be some number, right, that you can't picture. So you can't have an image of a chiliagon, and yet you do have the concept of it, right? 100-sided polygon. That's easy. It's in your head. You've got that. So notice there's a difference between words and images and concepts. Concepts are semantically determinate, right? They mean what they mean, and that's it. And there's no kind of fudging about them. 100-sided polygon, that's it. Addition, that's it. But words like addition and chiliagon, those things can actually mean different things, right? Those things are semantically indeterminate. They could refer to a specific concept you have, but they could refer to other concepts. It's not really determinate what they refer to. And really, this same problem is going to hold for any kind of material sign. Anything that you use as a sign that is material to stand for or to be a signal of some other thing, it's going to be indeterminate what that's a signal for, what that's a sign of. So here is the argument that at least thinking is immaterial. There is a fact of the matter about what concepts mean. Concepts are what are used in thinking. But there is no fact of the matter about what physical things mean. So concepts can't be physical things. The distinction is one that I was very happy. Actually, I was reading that article by Phaser. I don't know if it was in the article or he has a blog post where he addresses some other issues. I can't remember which one it was in. But he mentions Henry Veach's book, Logic as a tool of human, As a tool of human reasoning. I think that's what it's called. But it's an ancient book, and it's one that in my grad school they highly recommended, and I read it and loved it. But in that book, he makes a distinction between formal and material signs. So material signs are signs that have their own nature, but they also can function as signs for something else. So he brings up in the book smoke. Smoke, has its nature as smoke, but also function as a sign for fire, that there is fire somewhere. But that's not what smoke is, right? Smoke is just what it is, right? Which is whatever chemical composition it has. Or another example is the word fire on a piece of paper. The word fire on a piece of paper is just ink. That's the nature of the thing, is ink on paper. And it functions as a sign for fire, but it can also function as a sign for anything else. There's nothing in the nature of the ink itself that makes it so that it's functioning as a sign for this specific thing, fire, right? It could be a sign for anything. So that's where the semantic indeterminacy comes from. The fact that the nature of the thing isn't determining what it's a sign for. It just functions as a sign. However, concepts are different because concepts are nothing but their meaning, right? That's all that they are. So it's in the very nature of a concept to mean what they mean. So the concept fire just means fire. That's all it can mean, because that's all it is the meaning fire. So in the case of concepts, the determinacy problem doesn't arise. But now in the place where the argument comes in is that material things just can't be like that. Material things have material natures. Physical things have physical natures, and that precludes them from having a nature that is a meaning, right? They can function as meanings, but they can't be meanings themselves. They have to have some other kind of nature that makes them physical, and therefore our concepts can't be physical. There are a number of ways that you can object to this, and one way is to just throw out the idea that our concepts are determinate. You could say that, no, thoughts are not determinate. And that sounds weird, because if you think about it, don't I have the concept of a chiliagon in my mind? It seems like that's pretty determinate to me. The idea here would be, nope, you don't. It's not there. Of course, this is highly implausible. It sure seems like it's in there, and there doesn't seem to be any real reason for us to reject the idea that it's in there, except for in order to save the physicalist, right? So save the person who thinks that the mind can't be immaterial, that it must be physical. Now, there's all kinds of times when philosophy stumbles on implausible things, and you just have to bite the bullet and say, yeah, things are weird. But if it's something that's implausible, and the whole reason that we're going to buy it is because we don't want to believe in something different, then that is called begging the question, and that's not a legitimate way of arguing. So this is not a good objection. Another objection, this comes from philosopher Peter Dillard. You might think about things this way. Aren't there determinate physical systems that are used semantically? Like there is computer science uses and gates and or gates, and those are determinate, right? They mean what they mean, and there's nothing else that they mean. And like the electron's going one way or it's going another, and that's all. The response here would be that yes, these are determinate, but they're physically determinate systems. They're not semantically determinate systems. So the difference between physical and semantical means everything physical is determinate, right? There's nothing that is physical that is what it is, maybe, right? No, physical things just are what they are. That's physically determinate. And so an and gate would be physically determinate in that it just is what it is, and it's going to move which way that it moves, and that's it. But semantic determinacy is there a determinacy in the meaning of the thing, right? Is it determinacy there's a determinacy in what the gate is going to do, but not what the gate means, and that's a different thing, right? So there isn't semantic determinacy in computer science. So this objection would fail as well. A final objection you could give is that, well, doesn't neuroscience show that the brain is necessary for thinking, right? This would be to say that thought is immaterial, but we see all the time where you can't think without the brain. So isn't that evidence to the contrary? And a response here that is especially open to hylomorphists is that yes, it is necessary for thinking, but it's not sufficient for thinking. We must have, in addition, this non-physical thing. So there's a great discussion in Phaser about this, he points out the difference between propositions and sentences. So a proposition is what a sentence means, and there's going to be a difference between the two. Why? Because if I say something like, the snow is white, right? That sentence means something, but la nieve es blanca means the exact same thing, right? So those are two physically different things. And if I write it down, the snow is white, on pen and ink, that's physically different than the actual words coming out of my mouth and the air vibrations that is the sentence that has been uttered. So there are different physical things, but the same meaning. So the meaning is going to be distinct from the physical in the case of a proposition. So our only means to getting at propositions are through sentences, and in the same way, our only way of getting at thinking is through the physical as well. In the first place, we require the physical to get our concepts. We need, for example, our physical apparatus to get the concept of a rabbit, let's say, right? In order to have a concept of rabbit, I first need to see a physical rabbit. It needs to physically hit me, right? And not only that, but there also needs to be stuff physically in my brain. There needs to be a physical image. Well, not a physical image, but it's kind of weird, and Phaser talks about this for hylomorphists, that an image in the brain or in the mind would be considered physical. Because if you think about it, the physical photons come and hit your physical form, and they impress upon you the image of this thing, and that part is physical, the image of let's say the rabbit. But in order to get this concept of rabbit, now that's a different thing. I'm going to adapt a thought experiment by W.V.O. Quine, the GAVA guy thought experiment. Imagine you have this image of a rabbit in your mind, right? You're keeping it in front of you what does that image mean, right? What concept does it refer to? Does it refer to the concept rabbit? Maybe, but it could also refer to a temporal slice of a rabbit, right? In other words, like just a momentary existence of the rabbit, or it could refer to an undetached part of a rabbit. There's all kinds of things that it can mean. And a good way to see this is just look at any picture and ask somebody, hey, what does this picture mean? And you're going to get a million different answers to it, right? Because a picture can mean almost anything. An image is the same way, even if you're just imaging just the rabbit. But the concept, right? Four-footed, fluffy, hopping thing, or whatever the concept of a rabbit is. Now that can only mean what it means. That's just, conceptually, that's just the rabbit. Or the word rabbit written out, that could actually mean different things. In a different language, it could mean something different. But the concept can't mean different things. So we have these different physical things that point to a rabbit, but indeterminately, right? They might mean rabbit, they might mean something else, but in thought, there's only one thing it can mean. Therefore, thought must be different than physical things. Thought must be non-physical. There's the argument. There's a related argument that says that thinking is universal as well, and we'll talk about that in probably the next video. So that is the argument for the immateriality of thinking based on the semantic determinacy of concepts. If you have any questions, please hit me up in the comments. Otherwise, I will see you guys in the next video. Adios.